Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to This or That. This is a video series where I share with you decks that I have paired up against one another to decide which deck will stay and which will go. Oh boy, so confession time. I actually have been in the past when I film these videos putting up polls to share with you guys the different head-to-head decks that I'm considering and then getting your guys' opinions on them in community polls ahead of time. However, I had started to get a little pile and I really wanted to make this video now. So my impulsiveness means that you have no idea what decks I'm about to share with you. However, since I didn't do the community polls, I would really love it if as you watch this video, you just build a little comment and say which was your favorite of every pairing or which one, if it was up to you, you'd pick for yourself. I love hearing from you guys which of these you like, which ones you prefer, and if you have any particularly strong feelings or think I've made just a terrible decision, let me know that too. Every once in a while, y'all will talk me into keeping something that I was going to let go of, or maybe the other way around. So I have quite a few pairings to do today, so we are just going to jump right into it. So the first pairing is one that I've been thinking about for a little while now, and I knew this day was going to come pretty much as soon as I got one of these decks. And we are going to be looking at, or I'm going to be looking at, the Metamorphoses de Jour Tarot versus the Bohemian Animal Tarot. I would have never thought in a million years that I would even have these decks in my collection, let alone be looking at which one I want to keep and which one I want to go. Before I jump into kind of musing through my thoughts, let me just share a little bit about my experience with both of these decks. So the Metamorphoses de Jour Tarot is a deck by Taroko Studios. It's really, really beautiful. The cardstock is lovely, and it features the artwork of J.J. Granville, and it's really whimsical and it has this storybook feel. This was actually a deck that I was really excited to pick in a previous Say Yes to the Deck video that I did, but I don't know. I got it, I worked with it, and it fell completely flat for me, and that is sometimes just what happens. There's no rhyme or reason. The artwork is absolutely beautiful and whimsical and funny, but it didn't connect the way that I thought it was going to connect. I was so disappointed. But I got this, and I worked with it, and I was like, I don't know, maybe I just need to give it another try. Maybe it's just me, I don't know. So I set it aside, and then sometime, I don't know in which order this all happened in because I have the worst memory ever, but at some point I came across the Bohemian Animal Tarot. Now this one, I remember how I came across it because it was Wesley during a Helping You Say Yes to the Deck episode that showed this deck, and I was like, I'm just going to start flipping through the backs. Look at that. I was instantly charmed. Now, this is a mass market deck, and this one is an independent deck. This one's much more affordable than this one, and actually, you could say that their art style is nothing alike, and I think that's the reason why I bonded with this one so easily, because this one is full of bright, sort of vibrant color. It still has that sort of storybook playfulness about it, but it's just really, I don't know, there's something about it that's smart. I feel like instead of it feeling like it's just animal heads stuck on people bodies, like sometimes you do, like here, right? Animal head, people body. But sometimes it feels like the animal like goes through more of that figure. But you know what it really is? If I'm being completely honest, when I worked with both of these decks, each individually, when this one, I was working with it, I only got through like 2/3 of a week and I was so over it. I was not feeling anything. It just felt completely, nothing was connecting. But when I worked with this one, it connected immediately and I bonded so quickly, and when I was working with it, I didn't want to stop working with it. So I worked with it for 2 solid weeks before I was ready to even move on to something else, which for me is really, really saying something. Again, I think the colors here make a huge difference in why I seem to be leaning into this one, but really the major tipping point is the guidebook. The guidebook for the Bohemian Animal Tarot is incredible. It is so good, and like, just be prepared for me to hear me talk about it a lot, because it's just really well done. This is not a terribly new deck, but it's just really really well done. I genuinely enjoy the artwork. I genuinely enjoy the vibrant colors, and it just makes me really happy to look at it. It's glossy, it's gilded, you know, whatever, but it's fantastic. I even thought about whether or not I would want to trim it, and I think I ultimately decided I didn't want to, but this is a deck I could potentially modify. So this one, the decision for me is super clear. I'm going to be keeping the Bohemian Animal Tarot, And I'm going to be rehoming the Metamorphoses de Jour by Taroko Studios. It comes in this kind of a box. So I am like sure that's what I'm going to do. The next pairing, okay, so this one was tough because I was struggling. Okay, so this first one is really new to my collection. This is, as was Metamorphosis really in the grand scheme of things, but we have the Linescape Tarot by Destiny, and we have the Majestic Earth Tarot by J.D. Hildegard Hinkle. Now, okay, let me just be really, really honest here right out the gate. I knew that there was something about Linescape that wasn't working for me, but I also felt like it was unique in my collection. And that was my stopping point. I tried to work with Linescape. I think the artwork's really beautiful. Let me just talk through this. I think the art's really, really gorgeous. However, one thing that I noticed, and several of you commented on as well, is sometimes it can be really hard to see the actual white line work, particularly on some of the lighter backgrounds. It's a really cool deck. And one of the things that I think I was really excited about this deck is that it felt very sort of atmospheric. I love the vector style artwork. This is very much a soft spot for me artistically. And one of the things I found looking at this deck is I felt like it was drawing me into the environment. Like the environment was the highlight of the artwork versus the figures. And that's one of, I think, the benefits of this style, this line style of artwork. I really think it's a clever deck, and the associations just make a ton of sense to me in here. I didn't ever really come across any cards where I was like, I don't know what that means or what that's telling me. Like, look at this gorgeous death card. It's a really, really beautiful deck. But when the rubber meets the road, I do like all of my client readings pretty much on video, with a couple of exceptions when I read locally. But I pretty much do everything on video or on camera. So having a deck where the client might not be able to clearly see what's happening in the card just because of the nature of the artwork. And again, there's nothing wrong with this artwork. I think it's stunning. But I realized I probably wasn't going to be wanting to keep this long term. But I hesitated because I'm like, I don't think I have anything in my collection that feels this scenic and this atmospheric. And then I was like, wait. So I did already know how this was going to go, in case that wasn't clear. Same as with the last pairing. But the Majestic Earth Tarot, yes, this one is currently out of print. Keep an eye on eBay because copies do go up. And I was able to get this copy on Amazon, but I also know that recently there's been a couple instances where the creator has put some factory seconds up for sale, so you might still be able to snag one that way at some point. I don't know if they're all gone or what the deal is, but this deck is very atmospheric. It definitely has the environment as the highlight because it's all based on landscape art. And there are figures, there are people, there are scenes happening, but you have to look a little more closely. Now, here's the funny, ironic thing I realize as I'm saying this. If I were to use this for a client reading, the client wouldn't necessarily be able to see the scene on this, like see what was happening, any better than they could see it on this. And in fact, of the two on video, I feel like this is harder to pick out details on video than this would be. So my reasoning kind of falls apart, and I realize there's something else that's just not clicking, or else I wouldn't have found that this one scratches the itch, whereas this one doesn't. So I think there's a lot of subjectivity. I mean, there's always subjectivity with these kinds of decisions, but I think ultimately I just realized that I'm unlikely to take the time to bond with this because I've already bonded with this one. So I'm going to be putting my Linescape Tarot into purgatory. And I'm definitely keeping my Majestic Earth. I can't imagine ever parting with this. This is by the same creator as the Tarot of Delphi. I'm a huge fan of this art specifically as it was picked for this deck. I just think it was a really well done world building in a way, but just by the curation of the artwork. Okay, this next pairing is going to be my Little Monsters Tarot next to the Tarot, how am I going to say this? Tarot Un Portal al Alma. Now, I actually filmed the walkthrough for this deck quite some time ago, but I only recently put it on the channel because I knew this video was coming up and I realized I hadn't shared my walkthrough yet. I have worked with this deck a fair amount, and I've worked with this deck a fair amount, but both are in this really unique space where they seem to bring, let me just zoom in some side, and we'll just flip through them side by side because I really just don't know. They both seem to fill this kind of otherworldly, like look at, even these characters have some synchronicity between them. They both have this kind of sketchy, kind of messy, but in a cute, kind of quirky way quality to them. By the way, this deck doesn't come in this oval. I hand trimmed it into these ovals and I edged it. I did a terrible job of the edging. This one's This one, I don't know. I like this deck. It is monochromatic, and I've toyed with the idea of adding some pops of color to it or just keeping it as it is. But to be honest, I don't really ever reach for it, and I don't know how much of that is because my oval trim makes it really kind of hard to shuffle. I hand over hand it, but it's doable. I don't know how much of it is because there's just other decks I tend to reach for more, but it is such a clever deck. I kind of wish that there was not originally, when this deck first came out, it was ovals, as I understand it, or it was intended to be ovals. And then independently it came out and it was like a more pocket-sized deck, like something probably a little closer to this size. But it actually came out in these really big cards. So I knew I had to trim it just to make it more manageable. And then I had the idea to trim it to the oval borders, which were on the cards. It's a whole long-winded story I feel like I'm getting into. And I really enjoyed working with it for a time, but I'll be honest, it has really just sat since then. So this one is not really seeing much use, but I feel like I'm hesitant to let it go because of all the work I put into modifying this deck, and the edges are a mess, and I don't know if it would even find a really proper good home. So I think if somebody were to reach out and like be like, I'm really excited about that and I like that, maybe I could let it go, but I don't know. I cling to it, right? Because of all the work and time I put into it. But it is kind of tricky to shuffle, right? Like I can kind of do this business, but I don't really work with it. I do enjoy looking at it. So I don't know, that counts for something, right? The Tarot Un Portal Alma, on the other hand, has these bright pops of color, and I feel like I really clearly can tell which card is which, and I think it's really clever the way that the cards are depicted. I have, though, found that when I went to use it, the wand suit in particular, Bastos in this deck, obviously, I love this death card, but the wand suit just did not connect at all. I'm pretty good with all the other suits, I believe, if I remember correctly. But the wand suit, it just didn't click, which is a darn shame because I really enjoy the majors. I love the way that these chords are running between these characters in this Nine of Cups. It's really pretty. It's really smart. Now you can still get this quite easily on eBay for I think around $60 US, which is around what I paid for it if I remember correctly. So you can still get this even though like I thought it was out of print. I think it's out of print, but I've seen copies going on Etsy for quite some time, or on eBay rather, for quite some time. So I don't know, maybe it's just still available, but it's hard to get. I don't know what the story is there, but I really find the art so charming. And when I got this, I was thinking this would be what I wanted the Minute Tarot to be for me, but I couldn't bond with the Minute Tarot either. So I feel like I just keep trying to make decks like with this art style work for me. Another one that comes to mind is the My Garden, I think it's called My Garden deck. It was on Kickstarter, and I almost backed that one for the same reason. Like I'm drawn to this artwork, but whenever I have it in my hands, it just never quite lands. So then I don't end up using it, and here we are. So I feel like this one I do need to let go of for sure, the Tarot Un Portal Alma. Little Monsters, you know, I think what I need to do is I think I need to hold on to Little Monsters for a little while before I make any final decisions. I really enjoy this artwork, and I felt like, if I remember correctly, the guidebook was really good. I don't know. Is this one that I would really miss, though? See, I don't think I necessarily would. I almost feel like this is one of those decks, I'm really zoomed in, sorry. I feel like this is one of those decks that, like, was for a season rather than for a lifetime, you know? I just kind of feel like the vibe I got off of it when I first got it and was first working with it, which was so strong, just isn't there anymore. And my poor heart, because I can totally hear Robin at Toadstool Tarot, just his heart breaking right now, because I know he loves this deck so much. But I do like it. There's something about it kind of reminds me of Where the Wild Things Are a little bit, and there's just, oh, I love this moon card. But you know what? The more I look at it, the more I'm like, I'm just not inspired to work with this one anymore. See, like, here's an example of my really bad edging job. Look at this. Super thick black line on this one. And, like, whatever. It's just, and it was all hand cut to these ovals. So, of course, the ovals are not, like you can hopefully see. I don't know if the camera will pick it up. The ovals are not perfectly even. But there isn't any real noticeable white on the back. There's, like, the one perimeter line that's built into the border. I don't know. So, it's a really fun modification that I did. I'm kind of glad I had some time with this deck. But I think I don't know. I don't think I'm going to continue. I think I'm going to put it in purgatory. I'm not going to be in a rush, but I think I am going to consider rehoming this. I was not really expecting that. I figured I'd keep one or the other, but I think that one's going to have to, find a new home. Probably. We'll see. I'm not going to be in a rush on that one though, because I feel like that's one that if I hurry, I could regret. So I'm going to keep it slow for now. All right, let's take a look at the next pairing. This is another one where I'm not really sure what I'm going to do, and it's actually a 3-deck kind of head-to-head. So these are all spread building decks. So we are going to be looking at the Spread Machine, Cards and Oracle. This was created by Kimberly San, and her expansion pack, /mini standalone version, called Spread Machine Quest. And then most recently I was sent for, just to share with you guys, this spread deck created by Holly Nelson. These all have essentially the same function, to help you workshop and build spreads. So let me just take this one out for a second. I'm already struggling actually a little bit with these two, because when I got these at the same time. And Spread Machine, just to give you an idea of kind of how this is structured, I've done a full walkthrough. So, okay, I already have here. This is probably a good thing to talk about. So I have a whole section of cards of this deck that I actually keep in the bottom of the box that I don't use. And these are the focus area cards. So they're basically just topical. So what do you want to do your reading about? Academia, selfhood, introspection, wellness, health, self-care, spirituality, etc. Right? So they're just kind of to me, these feel a little bit like a significator where you just pick what your reading is going to be about. But I don't typically need a placeholder or a card for that purpose. So I find that I don't ever feel like I want to or need to use these. And then there is a quick start guide that kind of tells you how the deck is broken up into different sections. So you have, in the Spread Machine, you have Seeker, Shadow Work, Light Work, etc. And I'm not going to go into the whole thing because I do that in my walkthrough. But, and there's also a guidebook kind of teaching you how to use this deck. So I played with this one a bunch, and I find that it's really fun. It's a really good general spread building deck. So I actually backed these two on Kickstarter. And so the Spread Machine Quest deck, okay, so this one completely stole my heart. It actually inspires me to use it. And I think that's because it's built around a specific theme. So you still have your quick start guide, and you still have your little booklet. But here, it's basically a gamer theme. So you have character, power-ups, you have equipment, status, embark, like your quest basically. Here's what I'll say. Because this one has such a really unique theme, I find myself that when I want to play with a spread building deck, I tend to reach for this one. Like if I just want to like pull spreads for myself or like shuffle and do random or whatever, I just really enjoy the structure of this. I really love the theme. I really love the nerdiness of it. It just totally is something that I feel I genuinely enjoy using and working with. Whereas Spread Machine, I think because it's more general, and it actually in a weird way more multi-purpose, I get more overwhelmed with this one. So I tend to not reach for this one as much as I thought I would. That said though, it is done really, really well, in the sense that there's a lot of ways you can break it up into its different piles and build different kinds of spreads around different kinds of topics. I think I was actually going into this video thinking I might not want to keep this. But the more that I'm looking at it and thinking about it, the more I realize that I don't know. Okay, so this one and this spread deck actually are filling the exact same niche. So I think that those are the two that I really need to compare here. So I'm going to take Quest out of the way because I know I'm keeping this. I love this. I love the theme of this. This is a no-brainer. So this is for sure staying. So I might as well just get it out of the way. These two decks both tackle building spreads in a general way. So let me just take a look. These two decks have very different card stock. And I feel like they have a very different vibe. So let's just get into that first, because I think that actually matters. I don't know why I keep putting things away just to take them back out again. But let's talk about the vibe for a second. So here's what I notice. I feel like Spread Machine is very geared towards personal growth style readings. It's very much, I feel like it's very psycho-spiritual. I feel like it's very focused on themes that are around reading for yourself, very much personal growth kind of stuff. I wouldn't say that it's exclusively usable in that way, just that seems to be the energy or the theme of this deck, as well as with Quest. But with Holly's spread deck, it feels even more open in a way. I will say that here you get the name of the spread position, whereas on Spread Machine you get the name of the position or whatever this is going to represent in your reading. And then you also get some instructions or some ways you can look at this card or look at this position, which I actually find that super helpful, that little write-up, because it means that it just becomes a really user-friendly situation. Like the gratitude spreads or gratitude position says, what can you appreciate right now? What do you need to do to practice and invite gratitude in your life? Now, here's the flip side of that, though. That could be limiting if you want to use this deck in a way where you're not asking yourself those specific kinds of questions. Whereas the spread deck gives you very general, just words. There's no sections here, but you can clearly see there's like simple positions that you could use in a variety of ways. And if I had to say that this had a particular vibrant energy, I would say that this feels more like it would be more classic tarot / divination / predictive. It feels like it would be really good for building readings for yourself, but also for building readings for clients or for other people. And here's where I think I realize what my issue is I think that this is really useful for the idea of workshopping readings for clients or for others. But I feel like when it comes to kind of randomly pulling to create a reading for myself, this one doesn't really inspire me, whereas this one does. And that I further realized, I think, this is what I'm kind of putting together in my head as I'm looking at these. I think what I further realized is that I don't typically workshop spreads for others, because I have certain spreads that I go to, or I build my spreads for clients in a completely different way. Like I think about the specific question, or I think about common areas of concern, and then I wouldn't use something like this to build a spread. It's just not really how I work. But I really love things like this for prompting myself when I want to shake up my personal practice. And I feel like that's what this is really, really well designed to do. This can do it too. Do not get me wrong. It's literally a vibe thing. If I didn't have both, I don't know that I would feel this way. But because I've worked with this one and I've worked with this one, I feel like I have this like perspective on the different personalities, I guess you could say, of these two spread building decks. So I think where I'm landing is that this one just happens to not be suiting the way that I'm using a tool like this. So I think this is the one I'm going to let go. What's interesting is that, and I will say this is a design feature I love, one of the most functional, awesome things about this deck is the way that the prompts are also up at the top of the cards, so that if you lay cards on top of it, you can still see what position that is, which I think is so, let me just zoom in so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. That is so clever. I love that. That is an issue I've run across with this deck. However, what I've been tending to do with this deck is use it with mini decks, like my mini baby panda deck. So I haven't really had that issue because, again, I'm using it for myself. So it's just a different thing. But I think what I'm landing on is that this one is not, it just doesn't happen to match my practice the same way, whereas this one does. More specifically, this one does. But I don't think I'm ready to let go of the general spread machine just yet. I do think that could happen at some point because I really so love the change expansion. And this, I guess this could get mixed in with this deck if you wanted to, but I just really love using just this one. Like if I'm like, I want to play with a creative spread for myself, I'll grab this before I'll grab my spread books, which is saying something. This one I feel like feels like more of a tool, whereas this feels like more of a toy. Does that make any sense? And this feels like a tool that would be perfect if I needed it or wanted it for building reading spread ideas for clients. But because I don't feel like I want to do that way. Yeah, I'm just repeating myself. I'm just making sure that I'm like thinking through my decision and that it feels right. But I think it does feel right. And I do think that this one will need to move on to a new home at some point. For now, it's going to go in my purgatory pile and we'll take it from there. But I am going to be keeping both of these for now, with this one being my favorite of the two. Okay, we're going to be looking at the Liminal Spirits Oracle and the Sacred Destiny Oracle, which both seem to have this really magic-y kind of vibe to me. So let's take a look at these decks and sort of talk through why I feel like they're kind of landing in the same sort of space for me, and I don't know what my thoughts are. So this is a deck that I actually anti-hauled and then impulse bought. And I will tell you right now, I impulse bought it because I had a credit for my birthday at a local metaphysical store. And I was so curious and the art was so beautiful. Here's something I've learned about myself. Generally speaking, if I anti-haul something and then I go pick it up for myself afterwards, those situations haven't typically gone very well for me. You know, I need to make a whole separate video about that whole thing. Okay, so regardless, I anti-hauled this and then I went and bought this. So this deck, the Sacred Destiny, these are both mass market decks, by the way. These both feel like, to me, when I think about reaching for an oracle deck that's going to take me into a space that feels magical, that feels connected to nature and the natural world, these both feel like that to me in a general way. I certainly have decks that I feel like connect me specifically to animals or specifically to plants, but when I think of decks that have both, that have a feeling of like sort of nature in a variety of forms and landscape and earth and plants and animals and everything in between, these kind of general earth-centered decks, I don't know how else to say it, these both feel like they slide into the same niche for me. And to be honest, I don't use the Sacred Destiny as often as I think I would if I trimmed it. I just have been lazy about trimming it. And I think it would trim really beautifully. I think I've seen pictures of it trimmed, actually. So anyways, these both are kind of languishing right now. That's sort of the punchline. But I think what I've realized is that my initial impressions and the initial reasons why I anti-hauled, in fact, I'm trying to think if I should go back and look. I wonder if, maybe one of you guys will remember, I wonder if when I anti-hauled this deck, this was the deck that I said I liked best for my collection instead. Now I'm super curious. I'd have to go find that anti-haul. But I think that could be really interesting to find out, because where I find myself now is looking at both of these decks and thinking, of these two, I'm more excited to work with the Sacred Destiny deck. And I think the main reason that is because this deck is comprised? This deck is comprised of keywords throughout the deck, whereas this deck is comprised of titles. So here we have the Metal card. Well, okay. And we have the Mandrake card and the Forest card. But like, without working with the guidebook, I feel like this deck falls a little flat for me. I could definitely use it in an intuitive way, but it just feels like it's not poking at me in the same way. But the guidebook is so good. So the Liminal Spirits guidebook is really, really lovely. There's a great messages section, and there's also information about whatever it is that you see in the card. So it definitely draws you in that way, which I think is it's just really great. But likewise, I feel like Denise Lynn does a really good job in the Sacred Destiny guidebook. It gives me what I need, and there is actually a section that talks about what you see on the card, and then it talks about like what the Sacred Landscape wants you to know. So it's really focused on that idea of Sacred Landscape. I will also say that this pairs beautifully with my Majestic Earth, which is on the table in front of me, reminding me of that fact right now. So I think there's no question that this is the one I'm going to keep, and this is the one that needs to move on. But I'm kind of bummed because I feel like I didn't listen to my gut, because I initially did anti-haul this, and I'm now so curious what I anti-hauled it in favor of, and I really want to know the answer to that question right now. But regardless, I'm going to be keeping the Sacred Destiny Oracle, and I'm going to be putting into Purgatory and possibly rehoming the Liminal Spirits Oracle. Okay, we have two more pairings, and okay, the first one, I've just got to get this over with. This is one, I feel like I always do this to myself with this creator. So I have two Ciro Marchetti decks. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is not a fair fight, and I'll explain why. But I have the Legacy of the Divine Tarot, and I have the Tarot Grand Luxe. My heart is kind of breaking a little bit about this one, because I love, let's just get this out of its box. I love Ciro's artwork. I think it's incredible, and I could look at it all day long. But every single time, this is what the backings look like of these two decks. This is the Legacy of the Divine, and this is the Tarot Grand Luxe. Every time I get excited about a new Ciro deck and I buy it, this happens. And it always inevitably comes back to this deck. Basically, what I end up finding is that when I want to reach for a Ciro Marchetti deck, I almost always reach for this dang Legacy of the Divine. Now, I think there's a very important reason why that is, because I think when I'm comparing these two decks side by side, I really do believe that I love this one the most. However, this is the one I think of when I think of, let's zoom us in a little more. When I think of Ciro Marchetti decks, this is always the deck that springs to mind. This one and the Gilded Lenormand, which is also a longtime favorite of mine. I think the situation, here we have the Six of Swords and the Seven of Swords. How interesting is that? I think the situation here is that long before I started watching TarotTube, I had this deck and I used this deck and I loved this deck. And more than that, long before I ever had this physical deck, I had a app on my, I think it was I want to say it was like an iPod Touch. It was not a phone, and I don't think it was a tablet. It might have been a tablet. It might have been a tablet. In fact, one of my first tablets I ever had was a Asus tablet, and it might have been on that tablet. But there was an app, and I think it was literally called Tarot of the Divine or something. It was a gorgeous app, and the cards, it let me lay out spreads, it let me take notes. It was the first tarot app I ever used, and it had the artwork from this deck on it. And the amazing thing about that is that at the time, I could only really work with my Osho Zen Tarot in a physical form. That was the only deck I ever really reached for. But because I got comfortable with this app and comfortable with the images, when I ended up seeing a physical copy of this deck existing in the real world, I bought it, and I ended up really enjoying using it. And in fact, this was a deck that for a long time was the one I would take if I was reading at an event, if I was reading, because I like the artwork better than the classic Rider-Waite-Smith in a way. Like it was just drawing me in more. And it still is one of the decks, or just in general, Chiro decks tend to be decks I reach for when I'm reading for clients that put off, to me, a more like practical or masculine energy. Or clients who have questions around, say, money or finance or things that feel very practical. And I don't know why that is. Oh, this one is not my favorite Nine of Cups. But I love this Six of Cups. And like I even tried at one point to hold the deck side by side in order and like compare all the cards and figure out how many were my favorite in this deck and how many were my favorite in this deck. And I did the exact same thing previously when I had the Tarot of Dreams. But the same thing keeps happening. No matter which deck I like more cards of. This is such an amazing Two of Wands. Oh, it's so good. But no matter how much I like the artwork, I always go back to the Tarot of the Divine. Legacy of the Divine. Anyways, I love this Hermit card too. Look at that. It's so good. So it's not fair. I don't understand why this happens to me, but it does happen to me. And I can't explain it. I think Chiro's artwork is stunning. I think there are people out there who I'm sure have every single deck he's ever put out and love that as a mini collection within their collection. And I'm sure they get a lot of joy out of that because his artwork is just beautiful. But for some reason, I just can't. I'm guessing it's like if I found, maybe if, I don't know, I can't think of another good example. If there's another deck that I love so much that if the artist put out another deck, I would just have a hard time. Well, no, I have had that experience with Joanna Nelson's work too, sometimes with the tarot. But where because I'm so bonded to the Mons Tarot, I just have a hard time reaching for others. But I don't know. This is it's really beautiful. It's got this kind of futuristic yet still kind of medieval feel. I love this deck. I just don't think I can have another Chiro Marchetti deck in my collection right now. I think that's the conclusion I'm slowly reaching, is that apparently I can only have one. And I even tried putting this away, like in a box, for a long time so that I would be forced to reach for the newer Chiro Marchetti deck in my collection. And you know what happened? I still didn't reach for this anymore. And then I got this out of its box. So I missed it. So I guess that's saying something. And I'm not going to overthink it. Like you can tell this is a long time deck because this is one of the first Peggy bags Peggy ever made me. It's got this kind of funky gold fabric on the outside and this like sagey green on the inside. So it like perfectly matches the backing of it. Come on. Anyway, okay, whatever. I'm clearly keeping this one. And I think I am okay to let this one go, but it is so pretty. I kind of don't want to, but I also kind of realize that I'm never going to use it. So, wow, this is kind of hurting me a little bit. Okay, so admittedly, this next pairing, I think I know which way it's going to go. So, But I have the Elemental Tarot by Melinda Lee Holm. That's what the backings look like. And I have the Wild Unknown Tarot by Kim Krans. Now, this isn't as straightforward as it might appear because, of course, the Wild Unknown is much beloved, but also there's a lot of polarizing feelings about the Wild Unknown. I also should admit that I've already previously rehomed the Wild Unknown Tarot once. I've gotten it back, and because I missed it. Here's why I feel like these two tend to fall into the same sort of niche for me. They both feel a little bit pippy, and they're both very connected to the natural world. That's probably where the connections end. So here's my struggle. I love the major arcana of the Elemental Tarot with a love that is real, because the major arcana in this deck, it's experiential, right? So much like we might have heard about decks like the Spacious Tarot, you are first-person perspective into the card. So for example, in this Fool card, you're looking out over the edge of the cliff. You have a little animal companion here who's kind of looking at you like, what you gonna do? And then if you look off in the distance, there are these like little cloud stair steps to the horizon. So you're being the one, you're the one who has the invitation to explore what's next. There's also some great symbolism on this deck. Like the person who created this deck, Melinda Lee Holm. Melinda really knows her stuff, and you can tell by the way that this deck is designed. But like, look at this in the strength card. You're the person who has tamed the lion. And I want to talk through the minors. The minors are also very, very good, but they're just different. The Wheel of Fortune, right? You're being invited to participate, to jump on this wheel. It would be excellent. Would be excellent. I haven't done it with this deck, but it would be excellent for path working. Here's another major arcana card, Temperance, where you're at the beach, or Death. Like, it's just the Tower, where the ground is literally crumbling underneath your feet. It's really super smart. Here's the Devil, where in trying to get to these coins, you've gotten yourself trapped. Right? So it's first person, and what's better about that, what's even cooler about that, is that the guidebook is written in first person. So it literally talks you through the experience. In fact, we're just going to cover up the Wild Unknown for a second. It's not foreshadowing, I swear, but like, if you go to the Devil card in this deck, right before the Tower, it literally says, the only thing blocking your way is fear. Remove your aversion to risk and you'll be set free. A heavy thicket of thorns blocks your way. A pile of gold glitters a short distance away, but you cannot reach it, or rather you choose not to, because the potential pain of crawling through the thorns outweighs the pleasure of reaching your treasure. Unsure how to proceed, you sit and gaze longingly at something you believe is unattainable. And it goes on from there. It's so good. It's so good. I can't. I love this. I love this so much. But as much as I also love the minor arcana, they just don't have the same impact. So it is a pip deck. And the pip deck is, I think, it's smart. The guidebook is written in a smart way. It is an elemental deck, so it focuses on the relationship between the elements. I'm just kind of pulling out the majors as I encounter them. The court cards are also really smart because they blend the two elements present for every court card. So for example, here we have the Queen because we have water of earth, right? There's another major. And so the element is really the strongest part of this card. Or of this deck, rather. Here we have the Queen of Fire because we have water and we have fire, right? So water of fire. Here we have air of earth, so we have the King. So once you learn how this deck works, it's really smart the way the courts are done. You will know what you're looking at. But the minors just to me are so different from the majors that as much as I'm passionate about the way that this deck was made and how beautifully I think and how smart it all is. Again, these are not, I've seen decks where I feel like the pips are kind of just a publisher shortcut or an artist shortcut. This doesn't feel that way to me. It feels like the focus is on the elements and they want the elements to be front and center. And that's what it feels like was accomplished with this deck. It's really clean and beautiful. But I'm very picky about my pip or my pipish decks. And I feel like this one I don't ever feel like I want to reach for it, but that stops me from reaching for it in spite of the fact that I love the majors. And I think what I'm realizing and I'm getting excited about as I'm talking through this is I think I want to keep the majors and try this deck as a majors are only deck and literally just put the minor arcana away. This is a mass market, inexpensive deck. There's no reason why I have to feel weird about that. And so I think what I'll do is I'll put the minor arcana away and I think I'll keep the majors on this deck and try using it as a majors only. I'm going to have to check and make sure I have them all, but I feel like this could be a really powerful deck to use for questions that one might go to a majors only deck for. So I think that's what I'm going to do with this one. And then if I find myself still not reaching for it, because let's be honest, I don't use majors only decks a whole lot, then I can rehome it. But for now, I think I might try that before I give up on it entirely because I love the majors so much. But when I think about using a pip deck, there's always a different one I reach for. So there's a trick there. There's a catch. And I think the thing is about the Wild Unknown, I was trying to think of a deck that does a similar thing for me. And I think I don't know that you can even really compare these because the Wild Unknown has a pipish feel, but there's more to the pips, I feel like, than there is in the Elemental Tarot. There's more happening in the artwork that kind of cues you to the meaning of the card or cues me to the meaning of the card despite the pipishness. And the majors don't have that experiential sort of narrative style. So I don't know that it really compares. Also, because I've already rehomed this once and regretted it, I don't see myself rehoming this again. It's a part of my tarot history. I don't reach for it an awful lot, but I do enjoy the story that it tells and the ways that it played a role in my tarot journey. So I think I would keep this, if anything, just for sentimental. This Nine of Cups is one of my favorites, even though it's so simple. So yeah, definitely keeping the Wild Unknown. And for now, I'm going to keep the majors of the Elemental Tarot. Was that it? That was our last pairing. I just realized. So we had, I think we had 8 pairings this video. So let me recap what is staying. So I will be keeping the Sacred Destiny Oracle by Denise Linn, the Bohemian Animal Tarot, the Legacy of the Divine Tarot, the majors for now of the Elemental Tarot, the Wild Unknown, the Majestic Earth, and both my spread machine decks, the main one and the expansion. So keeping is 1, 2, 3, 4 and a half, 5, 6, 7. So 7.5 are staying. So going into Purgatory, we have the Minor Arcana of the Elemental Tarot, the spread deck, the Liminal Spirits Oracle, the Tarot Grand Luxe, the Tarot Un Portal al Alma, the Metamorphoses de Jour, the Linescape Tarot, and the Little Monsters Tarot. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5. Wow. That was an exactly even split. How did that happen though? Because I feel like I let 2 things go, but I also had 2 things. Oh, I know why, because these are kind of technically like 1. So technically I am letting go of more than I'm keeping, if you think about it that way, kind of. I don't know, is that creative math? You tell me. Let me know in the comments down below. Is that creative math? Am I allowed to do that? Anyways, so my friends, I'm just going to pile everything up here. Thank you so, so much for hanging out with me during this or that. I love making these videos. They're super fun to do. And I really am excited to hear what you guys think about the various pairings and what was your favorite out of each pairing, or I guess triplet in the case of the spread machine one. Let me know what you think. What were the things that you were like surprised that I chose any of the ones that I did, or surprised that I let anything go? Let me know down below. And thank you again for watching. As always, please do remember to click the like button if you enjoyed this video or you found value in it. Subscribe if you're new here, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you're notified of all my future videos. And lastly, don't forget to check out channel membership if you want even more content from me. Thank you all so, so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys!